I think you did a phenomenal job for a 12-year-olds. Thank you so
No,
much for having
thank you.
me.
Thank you. Hello, my friends. I welcome you to another episode of Adhitya Talks, and here we bridge our knowledge to success. So, today's episode based on future skills and creativity. So now, of course, World Economic Forum recommended creativity. Everything is creativity in the future. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about creativity. And who are we going to talk with? We are going to talk with Dr. Cyndi Burnett, and she is the director of creativity and education.com. She is a creativity and an education specialist who is devoted to developing creativity and engaging lessons in education. She spent 20 years as an academic teaching deliberate creativity thinking and creativity problem solving at the International Center for Studies in Creativity at the State University of New York of Buffalo State. So now she spends her days developing material and experiences for educators to help them bring creativity into their classrooms. Her work includes projects such as working with educators to bring creative thinking into the classroom, connecting communities of creative thinkers via social media, and designing and running a massive open online course MOOC on create everyday creativity. She is the recipient of President's Medal for Excellence in Teaching 2018 by the State University of New York of Buffalo State. She was a Buffalo Business First Woman of Influence 2018 for her work in creativity, and she was featured in the New York Times article Creativity Becomes an Academic Discipline. So she is an important person in creativity. Now she is also the co-editor of Big Questions in Creativity book series and co-author of the books like Weaving Creativity into Every Strand of Your Curriculum, 20 Lessons for Weaving Creativity into curriculum, which came in 2020 itself, and My Sandwich is a Spaceship: Creativity Thinking for Parents and Young Children. Dr. Cyndi has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theatre, a Master of Science in Creativity and Change Leadership, and a doctorate of Education in Curriculum Teaching and Learning, all of which she uses to help ignite creativity in education around the whole world. And in her spare time, she is found dancing with her two children and propagating plants and trying to find the world's best slice of pizza. So she's a very interesting person. She is going to share a lot of insights on creativity. So my friends, what are we going to talk about today? Creativity. And why do you need creativity? Creativity is like the most recommended skill needed for the future. And of course, children also need the skill. So we are going to talk about creativity. And if you want to know more about this topic, then stay tuned till the end. Hello my friends, I welcome you to my channel Adhitya Kehte Hain. And here we bridge our knowledge to success. And today we have an extremely special guest who is Dr. Cyndi Burnett. And she's a very great researcher in the field of creativity, and she's going to share some insightful thoughts with us today. So I welcome you to the show, Miss Dr. Burnett. And it's an honor to have you here. You're a world-renowned name in the creativity field. So can you tell us about some parts of your story?
Sure. So when I was young, like you, and thanks so much for having me, by the way. When I was young, like you, I was really interested in theater and dance. So I did a lot of work in theater and dance. And I'm the youngest of 5 children, but there's a huge gap between my siblings and I. So when I was younger, I had all these constraints where even though I had all these siblings, they were so much older than I was that I had to create games on my own so I could play by myself. So that was a wonderful constraint that I had back when I was young that forced me to be creative in the way that I played. And as I grew up, I loved theater and dance, and I went to school. My first degree was in theater and dance. And when I came back from a Broadway tour, I toured the United States. And when I came back, someone asked me, what do you want to learn about next? And I said, I want to learn about creativity. And so that sent me on a wild, wonderful adventure of studying creativity here in Buffalo, New York, at the oldest degree granting program in creativity in the world, which is the International Center for Studies in Creativity at SUNY Buffalo State. And when I got my master's degree, and it was a Master of Science degree, they invited me to come on and start teaching the creative studies program at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. And at that time, I got my doctorate in curriculum teaching and learning from Toronto, the University of Toronto. And I've been teaching creativity for the last 20 years. So now I run an online platform dedicated to helping parents and teachers bring creativity into homes and classrooms around the world. And that website is creativityandeducation.com. So if you go to that website, you can pick if you're a parent or you're a teacher and what age you teach. And then it will take you through how to help you integrate creative thinking into your life.
So that was very interesting. So now you told us about your story, but how did you properly get into creativity? Because creativity is not a normal field that people choose to build a career on. So in general, people can differentiate properly so that will help people differentiate properly between creativity and other fields. So please tell us about your creative idea to enter this field to serve more people.
Well, and this was back in 1998. So before you were even born, I had read a book called The Artist's Way, and it was by Julia Cameron. And this book really influenced me in my creativity. And as an artist, I was really interested in the creative process and what stops us from being creative and what helps us to be creative. And so when that person asked me, what do you want to learn about? And I said, I want to learn about creativity. It was surprising to me that there was even a field dedicated to creativity. And the creativity field is small, but it's also well established at this point. We've been doing research for the last 70 years. I haven't been around for quite that long, but the field of creativity has been going on for about 70 years. And so that's it. So that's how I got started in the field of creativity, by going through the master's program. And I loved learning the process of being creative and a deliberate creative problem solving process, which is very much like the scientific method. But I also had that wonderful background in the arts that also helped me in learning more about creativity.
Okay, that's interesting. So now I want to ask you, can creativity be original, as many people only steal and package nicely with their own flavor? Because it's like many people steal like an artist. They are not creativity. They consider creativity as not an original thing. So can we consider this original and creative, or what?
I think originality is obviously closely related to creativity. So there's sort of a framework if you think about adopt, adapt, and create. And so often when we look at new ideas, we can just adopt something that someone else has already done. So we don't have to create something new. If I've got a problem, I don't necessarily need to use my creativity to solve that problem. Sometimes I can just look on the web and I can find something. For example, I have all these little fruit flies in my kitchen. And I could have generated a bunch of ideas and try to come up with something new, or I could just look on YouTube and find a video that helps me, capture all the little bugs in my kitchen, right? So I could adopt something. That's the first level, is just taking something that someone else has done and using it on my own. And that's not really creativity. That's just adopting someone else's idea. But I could also adapt that idea to my needs. So I could say, well, I can use this piece, and this piece. I'm going to fold over this paper and I'm going to put a banana underneath, and then the bugs will fly in and I will capture these little bugs through my little vase and the problem will be solved. So you can adapt it. The third piece is creating something entirely new, and that's where the originality piece comes in. So do you need to come up with something brand new? Most of the time you don't. Most of the time you can just adapt. And that's more like adaptive creativity than innovative creativity. So when you come up with something that no one else has thought of, that's more innovative creativity.
Okay, there's a book called like Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It like says that creativity is something that you steal, like when you steal something and you steal something and when you build upon it, it is called creativity. Creativity is nothing original, like everything under the sun is like old, nothing is new. So he portrays creativity like that, but I understand your point too. So now constraints are the breeding ground of like for creativity to happen. Mostly when people are stuck with when people are stuck with some problem and they do not have sufficient resources, they think in a creative manner to come with some alternate solution. What is your view and take us like what is your view and take on this topic, as we all know that abundance is the enemy of motivation to do something?
So are you asking me, do constraints help us be more creative?
Yeah, like it's something like that only.
Yes. Okay. So I would say constraints definitely help us to be more creative. And sometimes, and there's been research on abundance of ideas and even selecting ideas when you have too many to select from. So as an example of that, I remember going into a shop to purchase a couch, and they said we have 100 different types of materials you can use in all these different colors, and then all of a sudden you have to sort of create something and you go, I just want what's on the floor. I just want that couch because I can actually see it. And I think sometimes with constraints, when you have just a few things to work with, and you can create something because you can see where the boundaries are. And I think if there's just too much and you don't know where to start, it's hard to sort of hone in your focus to really deliberately think about what it is you want to create or what it is you want to do. So I definitely think that constraints help us.
Okay, so in India, poverty is widespread, and like people come with a lot of ideas with limited resources and do a lot of interesting stuff that we don't usually see. We call it Jugaad. Do you have any idea about it? How do what is the difference between Jugaad and creativity? I have some examples on the screen of some Jugaad, like to give you some ideas. Also, scientists launching satellites at the fraction of cost, more than which like Avengers Endgame was made, like with more money than that like rocket. So is this also creativity? Like, please take us deep down in this context so that our viewers can really understand the subtle differences as to how creativity is measured.
I think you've got a lot of different questions in there, but let's just talk about Jugaad. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you are dealing with Jugaad, which is about taking something and using it with minimal properties, so you don't have expensive things to build upon and you can make things more cheaply, correct? And make it more flexible. That is absolutely creativity. And that goes back to the constraints piece. And I think you have even greater creativity can be used in those situations, in those innovations, because you have such constraints. And when you're able to create something, it's even more magical, right? Versus if you have all the materials in the world and you say you can create anything you want and we want you to do this, but you have as much money and you have as much resources to help you. Well, it's great that you can be creative with that, but can you be creative when you don't have all those resources? So I think they're both creative acts, whether or not you have the resources or you don't. You have a little bit more, one of the examples you sent me was a box made of recycled materials that children can use as backpacks and then also use as desks. And I think that's such a beautiful example of being able to use your creativity in meaningful and novel and useful ways. And that's typically the definition I start with, is the generation of novel and useful ideas when it comes to creativity.
Okay. So, now how does creativity help in complex problem solving skills? This skill is defined as the future skill by the World Economic Forum. Please give me the blueprint of how we children should develop complex problem solving skills from the childhood, which are required to gain success in the future.
Sure. So creativity can be looked at in two different ways. One is expressing yourself. So we don't want to ignore that part. That's more of the artistic side and how you as an individual express yourself. And the other side is the more scientific side, which is improving upon things. And that's what you're referring to when it comes to complex problem solving, which, as you mentioned, is a very highly rated skill for the 21st century. Now, complex problem solving is about solving challenges that come your way. And there are different aspects of solving complex challenges. You need to be able to clarify problems and understand exactly what the problem you're trying to solve is about. So have you ever solved the wrong problem to something before?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes? Can you think of a time when you might have solved the wrong problem?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you're solving the right problem, and then you want to generate ideas for that. And then you want to develop solutions, and then you want to implement those solutions. And that's sort of a basic creative problem solving process. But we're counting on your generation to really continue to solve these complex problems that we are working on right now. And there are so many issues, as you mentioned, poverty and climate change. And I mean, the list goes on and on. But, how do we solve those problems? Well, you can't just steal like an artist and take something that someone else has done necessarily. You can see what other people have done in other situations, but things always have to be modified. So there's an adaptation to just taking something that someone else has done and creating it so it's meaningful and useful to you.
Yeah. So it's like something like you make a pizza, you take the base out of someone else's discovery and then add your own flavors, your own toppings to it. It's something
Right.
like that only. So
Yeah.
So please advise a few simple tricks using which parents can use to spark creativity and imagination skill in their kids and make this a lifelong process.
Sure. Well, I wrote a book about this. It's called My Sandwich is a Spaceship, Creative Thinking for Parents and Young Children. And there's now an app that you can download to do some activities with your children. But I'll give you a couple ideas. One is to get curious with your children. So I'm going to ask you this question. When you have a question about something, what do you do? What do you do? So you have a question, you don't know what something means. Do you say, I don't know what that means and walk away? Or do you go in search of the answer?
I go and find the appropriate book related to it and I just start reading, or I just go to my father or my mother and ask I ask questions related to that topic.
Perfect. So that's exactly what you should be doing. So instead of saying, well, I don't really know the answer to that, you say, well, where can I find the answer? Who can I ask? What books can I pull out to really uncover these answers? So that's one thing, is really taking care of your curiosity and nurturing that side. Because sometimes when kids ask questions, parents just say, no more questions. Stop asking me. I don't know what the answer is. But instead engaging in a learning process to help uncover those things. The second thing is about keeping open to new ideas. So have you ever been in a conversation with one of your friends and you suggest an idea and they go, no, I don't like that idea. No, we shouldn't do that.
It's almost all the time. I go to my
all the time. Oh,
Yeah.
So what what keeping open is about is when someone gives you an idea that you stay open to it. So as long as it's not going to hurt anyone, which we don't ever want to hurt anyone with our creativity, as long as it's not going to hurt anyone, why wouldn't you say, well, let's explore that a little bit more, or I want to understand you and that idea and where you're coming from with that, or, and just keeping open for a few minutes to really listen to the idea instead of just shooting it down, which never feels good, right?
Yeah.
So that's the second thing. So keeping open, being curious. And I would say the other thing is about generating more than one idea. So when you take tests in school, do you have to come up with one right answer, or do you have to come up with multiple answers?
Yeah, like I think of multiple things in my mind, and the most probable thing is the thing that I raise my hand for.
Okay. So it's really good when you're listening to questions to generate multiple solutions. Like, is there just one right answer, or could there be multiple right answers?
Yeah.
And if you have a problem, and this is something that I do with my own children. So how old are you?
I'm like 12 years old.
You're 12 years old. So I have a son who's also 12 years old. And when he has something that bothers him, and I also have a daughter who's 10, but when they have something that bothers them, for example, we just got a new dog. He's a rescue dog and we love him so much, but he's always taking our shoes and he's like hiding them on us. It's like a game he plays, right? So he takes our shoes, he runs off, he hides them. And then, so we were sitting around, we're like, I can't find my shoes. Where's my shoe? Do you know where my shoe is? So that's something that sort of annoys us or bothers us. So how do we come up with an invention, or how do we just do something that will stop that from happening? And that's where those complex problem solving skills come in. This is a little problem, like our dog's eating our shoe or hiding our shoe. But there are bigger problems that we might have as a family. So, right now here in New York, we've got the pandemic that's sort of at another peak. And we've got lots of questions like, there are lots of restaurants that are shutting down and they're going to go out of business. So how do we support them? And how do we support them in ways that we can? And so we talk about this a lot as a family, is when there are challenges that come up in the community or in our house, how might we solve that? With the dog, we decided that whenever we come in the house, we put our shoes into a location that he doesn't go in. Now, that's not a really creative solution, but it solved the problem. And that's what you always want to be looking at, is if something's not working, how might we improve it so that it does work?
Yeah, like Thomas Edison took 1,000 tries to reach the bulb. So
Yes.
it's obvious that you need many ideas to be actually creative and find the right answer for you. So that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're trying to solve a problem. Now, the COVID era has changed like every industry. Like you said, many restaurants are closing, and including schooling. So teachers today are inexperienced to teach children properly through technology. I have felt that gap, like in the education, is like the gap in education is increased more because the interaction in the school environment for the learning is missing. Now, can you please tell us how school teachers and students can apply their creativity in these times to reduce the impacts of remote teaching?
Wow, that is a big question for a 12-year-old, but let me try to answer it. So I think one of the things that we really need right now, especially, are you distance learning right now, or do you go into school?
I'm learning on like online platforms like Zoom.
Yep. Okay. So that's what my children are doing as well. So one of the things that teachers can do is starting to have conversations like this with their students and do creative things in the classroom. And actually, I don't know if you've seen, I've got a YouTube station called Creativity, and it's got probably 20 different activities you can do on a Zoom call or inside your classroom, but on Zoom calls or in Google Hangouts and Skype calls, if you're still using that. And what it does is they're just quick activities that can engage you and your teacher together in doing something meaningful and fun that fosters your creative thinking skills. But I think, the biggest challenge that we're facing is, teachers are tired, students are tired, we're all is just to be kind to one another, is knowing that everyone's doing the best we can right now, and that we will come out of this, and we'll come out of this stronger and more resilient, and our children will come out more resilient. But in terms of the engagement of learning, I think having some synchronous sessions with students, so that same in-time session, so that we can talk to each other and hear about each other's day. I have, my children have an amazing teacher. Every morning she meets with them, and there's a question of the day, and they've created different things in emoji classroom, and they learn from each other, and it's just like they would be in a classroom where they get to talk to each other like because they're friends, right? So I think just playing and allowing each other to have their own space to talk and communicate and think about things and throw in some fun along the way. So I know tomorrow my daughter has wear a crazy hat day, and she said to me, this is my 10-year-old. She said, Mom, I don't have any hats. She said, so I'm going to create my own hat. So she's building right now, as we speak, her own creative hat for her session tomorrow, her in-class session.
That's
online.
interesting.
So, yeah.
So actually, the biggest problem is that for creativity to foster, the thing is to be that, like, most of in our school, the thing is happening that, like, many children like close their videos, close their mics, and like go away, and there's some blank person sitting on the laptop, and the children are away and eating their breakfast, and while doing school, and everything is gone. But if the teacher tries to talk to the children and like make friends with them and like foster creativity, then I think that problem should go away. Now see, I have one more question. What is the difference between creativity and innovation, and how should one understand the difference between them and use them for their development? What is the thing that children should know about innovation in particular to contribute to society using this skill in the future?
Great question. So creativity is the process that leads to innovation. And innovation is something that is creative that goes out to the public. So if something is an innovation, it's actually been produced and has been accepted by the general community. So that's the difference. So creativity, you can't have innovation without creativity, because creativity is that process that leads to innovation. So that's what you need to know around that. I think the most important thing, if I could talk to the students, is that you need to practice developing your creative thinking skills. And those skills, it's like swimming, where when you learn how to swim, what are you learning how to do? Go. When you learn how to swim, what are you learning how to do?
Like we learn, I'm not sure. I do not have an idea about that. We are learning how to swim. That's what we are learning.
Let's try a different sport. Do you play any sports?
I play cricket, I play football, I play like tennis, table tennis also. I play badminton, and I play many games. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about cricket. So you're learning how to play cricket. What are all the components of being a good cricket player?
I have to learn how to ball. I have to learn how to bat. I have to become a good fielder, a wicket keeper, and that's all there is to it. And I have to memorize all the rules, of course.
Of course. So there's different aspects of being a good cricket player. It's not just about one thing. And that's what creativity is. It's not just about one thing. It's about being curious. It's about using your imaginations. It's about being original. It's about coming up with lots of ideas. It's about tolerating uncertainty, which we're dealing with a lot right now. It's about embracing challenges. It's about being playful and humorous. So it's about all these different aspects. So there's so many things as children that you can start to develop now that will help you create innovations as you start to develop because you want to have some domain expertise. You don't have to have domain expertise in an area to really develop an innovation or a product, but it certainly helps. So it's unlikely that I would be able to come up with a vaccine for COVID because I don't know anything about infectious diseases. But if you have that expertise, and that's where domain knowledge really comes in, and that's why you have subjects in school, like science and math and writing, because you need those subjects and you need that content to really understand. But then you have your creativity skills that will help elevate you into a creative process, which will lead to innovation.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting perspective. Now see, is entrepreneurship a true reflection of someone's creative abilities to solve large and big problems in the society? And if this is so, then how can we teach creativity to school kids, which can help them to use this ability to to use this creativity for the betterment of the society? You can give a few examples also.
Sure. So if you're using your creativity to come up with new ideas that will help, that you can actually sell. So that's sort of where the entrepreneurship piece comes in. You have to be creative as an entrepreneur. So especially something like right now, and I was just talking with someone yesterday and they said, I feel so bad for this restaurant. It's going to shut down because we can't go into the restaurant to eat. And I said, they just need to think about things in different ways. So as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to continue to think in new and innovative ways, even if you are successful. So for example, Kodak, which was before your time, they were very big into photography and film development. And they always thought that they would always be at the forefront, but they never adapted to the times. And right now, during this pandemic, there are so many businesses that need to think in different ways in order to continue to thrive. So I'll give you a great example of this. We are very famous for our pizza in Buffalo, New York. And there's a place called Casa de Pizza, and they came out with something called a pizza bomb. Now, bombs, never a good thing, unless they're pizza bombs, which they were a regular pizza, and you could say you've been pizza bombed, and they deliver these pizzas for $15 anywhere in the entire area. So they couldn't have people come into the restaurant, but they could send out these pizza bombs. And so I bought pizza bombs for all of my friends, and they got surprised. So, imagine you get a knock on your door and someone has left you a big box of pizza that says you've been pizza bombed by your friend Cyndi, and there's a pizza. And so that was something that was unique and easy for them to do and sort of playful and fun. And, it was a way for them to innovate.
That's creative.
That's creative, right? Would you like a pizza bomb?
But unfortunately, I am not in that area. But of course, so yeah, I humbly accept if it can reach here. But okay, so I have learned and enjoyed so much from this conversation. Can you please advise a few books and courses that our viewers can refer for developing a strong foundation in creativity?
Sure. So if you go to my website, creativityandeducation.com, you're going to find lots of resources. So I just wrote a post about 4 books that will help you understand creativity. I have a post coming out next week that's around books that will help you live a more creative life. I've got another post that's coming out around books for children that will help them develop their creativity. We have an entire animated course on creative problem solving on our website that's all free, and you can easily access that. I have a book called Weaving Creativity into Every Strand of Your Curriculum, which I have somewhere around me. And I also have my Sandwich is a Spaceship book, and that's for parents. So I have a teacher book, a parent book. And so those are just some resources, but if you go to my website and you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll be getting lots of information every month. We just send out an email every month with lots of different resources for people, parents, teachers, children, anyone can become more creative. And we have one more thing I want to mention. Have you ever heard of a massive open online course?
Honestly, no.
That's okay. Well, now I'm going to have you go look for it. So a massive open online course is called a MOOC. And these MOOCs are all, they have them at major universities. And my colleague and I designed a MOOC called Igniting Your Everyday Creativity. And that course is free and open and available. And that's also on my website. So there are lots of things that you can access that are completely free to help you build your creativity and your creativity skill set.
Yeah, it's also available on Coursera, right?
Yes, it's on Coursera.
Yeah, so anybody, if you want to learn like creativity, you want to like dive deep into this topic, then you can visit ma'am's site. I will put it in the description below, so be sure to check it out. Now, can you please tell us about your best mentors or guides who have always inspired you to do the best?
Sure. So I've been very fortunate to have some really amazing mentors in my life, but one in particular, her name was Dr. Mary Murdoch. She was my first graduate teacher in the master's program in creative studies. And she was very inspiring, and she really allowed people to be their individual selves. And she really inspired me. And she worked with the father of creativity, who was E. Paul Torrance. So E. Paul Torrance was known as the head honcho of creativity and education. He died in 2003, but one of his graduate students was my mentor, Mary Murdoch. And unfortunately, Mary died in 2009, but I continue to develop her work that she has done with me and along with my colleagues. And so she was probably the most influential of all of my teachers.
So that's interesting. Now, who would you like to listen like to listen to and learn next on our show? My show, Adhitya Talks.
I would say go and find, and I don't have a specific name, but go and find a good futurist. So do you know what a futurist is?
No. Can you please explain it?
Sure. So a futurist is someone who thinks about the future and who sort of predicts the future. So they look at trends and where trends are going and how things change. And futurist is so interesting because it's really amazing to think about what could be in the future, especially now that we've had this curve with the pandemic. So where will things go? We don't know. But futurists actually try to predict what's coming. And, if you look at some futuristic articles, they'll say that, 2/3 of the jobs that your generation will be applying for don't even exist yet. So how do we prepare you for jobs that don't exist? Well, you can ask that to a futurist.
Yeah, now that's interesting. Thank you. My viewers, this was a very, very, very it was a very creative talk I had with Dr. Cyndi, and she is a very creative person, and she shared so many interesting insights that I hope you found interesting too. And if you are ready and willing to dive more into this topic, then you can visit her site and her YouTube channel too. So be sure to visit those two. And well, thank you for watching till the end. Thank you, ma'am, for coming on the show. Thank you. Bye bye.